Hello and welcome back to the PSD to HTML responsive portfolio build. Now that we've gotten our navigation items set up in HTML, we're going to move on to the rest of the header of our document, which is just some simple text, which is halfway done already. But again, we can see our site as is right now. And as we mentioned before, we do have a few broken images here. The images haven't been created yet, and we're not going to create them just yet, because they're white images anyways, so if we were to look at them right now, we wouldn't be able to see them on the page. They would just blend in with the white background. So we're not even going to worry about the images until we start styling our page later on. Right now, we're just concerning ourselves with the structure. So now we're going to move on to the next section, our header. So let's jump into first, let's go to Finder, and I need to create a new folder here for Site 03. So we'll just copy Site 02 and paste it and rename it Site 03. So we're currently working with the files that we ended with in the last video, which are contained in the Site 02 folder, and all the changes we make in this video will be saved in the Site 03 folder. So I'm going to drag Site 03 down to the TextMate icon, and then we'll close. I guess it's already been closed. Let's check that out. No, here we go. We're going to close the Site 02 folder because we no longer need that, or the Site 02 index.html file. And then we'll open up index.html for Site 03. So here we see all the changes we've already made. And let's jump back into our Photoshop file. And we have our design portfolio page here, our header here, excuse me. And then below that, we're going to create a subheader for that. So design solutions for your business. Let's jump back into our HTML and let's enter that text in. So we have our H1 tag here. And then just below that, I'm going to put an H3 tag and we'll type in the text we just talked about, design solutions for your business. And then we'll close that H3 tag. Easy enough. And that's really all we have for that top header section up here. So now let's go ahead and move on and get started with our featured section, which has our 3 different categories of design: web design, graphic design, and video production. And we'll create the structure for that. Now again, this is another section that's contained within the same width as the rest of our content, but it has a background that extends out to the edges. So again, we're going to have to create 2 levels here. We're going to create one block that extends all the way to the edges with a width of 100%, and another block within that that's contained within our specified width for our site. So let's jump into our code and make that happen. So we have our header up here, and right now we just put an H1 and an H3 tag. Let's actually make this make a little more sense with HTML5 using the header element. And since this content needs to be contained within that width, even though it probably won't extend to that width anyway, let's go ahead and give this header a class of container. That way, the content inside it won't get any wider than it's supposed to get. And then we'll put our closing header tag here after those 2 heading tags. So there's our header. Now we'll move on to the next section, which we'll put inside a section element with a class of feature. This is going to be our featured section. And then we'll go ahead and skip a couple lines and put our closing section tag. So everything that we saw there with the icons and the background and the dark gray background that extends to the ends, all of that is going to be contained inside this particular section. And then, so we'll actually use this section, or this class here, I guess, this class of feature. We'll use that to extend the background to the edges, that dark gray background, and then inside the section we'll create an unordered list that has those 3 columns in it, and that unordered list will have a class of container, which will limit its width to the width of the website. So inside the section, again, we'll create an unordered list with a class of feature list so that we can style it. We're also going to give it a class of container. So if you want to apply 2 classes to this item, we simply put a space in between the 2 class names. So we have feature-list, which we're going to use to style the list itself, and then the class of container, which we're going to use to set the width of that list. So we'll skip a couple lines here and put our closing unordered list tag. And then inside that unordered list, if we go back to our Photoshop file, each one of these large blocks of content is going to be a different list item in that list. Now, it might not have initially occurred to you to make that a list, and certainly you could make this divs or other sections or something like that. I like to use this as a list just because it's kind of what this is. This is a list of our sections, and I want my HTML to make sense from a semantic standpoint. And by semantic, what I mean is I want the markup to define what our content is. And this particular piece of content is kind of a list of categories, our web design, graphic design, and video production categories. So we're going to make that a list. So we've created the list here. Now we're going to create our list items. And we need to think about what those list items are going to look like. So if we go back to our HTML, we can see that these list items are going to have a large width and height. And inside them, we're going to have an icon and some text. Now for the background image here, we're going to apply that to the list itself, to the unordered list. And then we'll put the text and the icons inside each list item. Now I want the icon and the text to both be clickable so that when we click on that, it will take us to the web page. So I want to put all of that content, the icon and the text, inside an anchor tag or inside a link. Then we'll put our image, which is going to be this icon, and just after that we'll put our title here for that section, and we'll put that inside an H3 tag. So let's go into our content, and there are a dozen different ways you could do this, but this is the way I'm going to handle it. So I'm going to skip a couple lines and put our closing list item tag there. Then remember, we're going to put all of this inside a link, so we'll go ahead and create our opening anchor tag, skip a couple lines and put our closing anchor tag, and then inside that anchor tag we'll have our icon and our text. So again, our icon is going to be an image, and it's an image we haven't created yet, so this is where we're going to decide what our image name is going to be. So let's create our image tag here, img space, and let's go ahead and give this a class of feature-icon. That way we can go in and style these icons however we want to. So we'll call it feature icon, and for the source, forgot how to spell there for a second, src equals, and we're going to put all of our images inside a folder called images / and this is for our web design section. So let's just call it web.png. We need to use a PNG because we want that transparent background around it. So we'll call it web.png, and then we'll give this an alt attribute of web design. So there's our image. Now I'm going to jump down to the next line and we'll create our H3, and let's go ahead and give this a class as well, and we'll call it feature-title. So we're describing what the content is here with our class names. So H3 class equals feature title, and this one is going to say web design, and then we'll create our closing H3 tag. So now we can just take this list item, copy it, and paste it twice so that we have 3 different list items here, which are going to amount to 3 different columns. And for our second one, it's going to be a graphic design section. So we're going to change our image name here to graphic.png. We'll change our alt text to graphic design, and we'll change our feature title text to graphic design as well. Then for our third icon here, it's going to be for video production. So let's call this image video.png. We'll change our alt attribute here to read video production. And then we'll change our feature title here to video production as well in all capital letters. Now you don't have to do this in all capital letters. You could do this in lowercase letters if you wanted to, and then in CSS you can make it all caps. However, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like that, and let's see how that looks. Let's save our page, open that page up in Chrome, and we'll take a look at it. So again, it's not going to look great yet. We just want to make sure that that everything is there. So we can see the header and subheader. We can see that we have 3 icons with the text beneath it. And as far as the structure goes, everything is looking fine so far. So in the next video, we'll move on to the next section. And thank you for watching. I'll see you then.